Hey, we are past our Berkeley time, so I don't want to take any time away from the speaker. I know you all will start to kind of file in one at a time. If you haven't noticed our rhythm yet, I just want to remind you that Ryan sends out an announcement. You have a syllabus saying who our speaker is every week. Ryan will send out an announcement in case you haven't had a chance to do your own feedback. And at the end of every class, we post the code, ask you to take a picture of yourself, and then use that code to go into B courses. And not only track attendance that way, but even more important is your feedback. And I don't know if any of you have gotten notes from me. Sometimes I'll respond because you have given me some good input in the feedback. But more than that, it's really for our speakers. And the reason our speakers are here, in case you don't already know this, is because of you. So getting feedback from you is incredibly important. Today, we actually have two speakers who will be sitting in the front, and then Ryan and I will be juggling one microphone because that's sometimes just how it goes. So welcome to this lovely warm day. It's maybe the first time I can say, perhaps you'll be comfortable in the room for at least half an hour until you get cold again. Today, we are incredibly fortunate. Our moderator for our talk today is none other than UC Berkeley's College of Engineering Dean Tsu-Jae King Liu. Tsu-Jae is an acclaimed industry leader. She has over 500 publications and I think over 100 patents, or is it 96? It's very close, not that we're being exact, in the field of semiconductor technology. But here at Cal, she's known as our beloved Dean of the College of Engineering, and she really is a force for cultural transformation within the college. I almost have to read this out loud because it is a long one. She's a force of transformation within the college and within the fields of engineering in general to be more welcoming, more inclusive, more socially connected, and to help ensure that any engineering innovations have broad positive impact with minimal unintended negative consequences. She's also, in case you didn't know this, the first female dean of the UC Berkeley College of Engineering. And recently it was announced that she's the sole candidate for the NAE, the National Academy of Engineering, for its presidency. And there too, should she be elected, which I'm still on the fence if I want that to happen or not. But yeah, sorry. You would also be the first female. She earned her get ready, I heard that woohoo before. She earned her BS, MS, and PhD from Stanford in electrical engineering. But that's okay, because she has been here as faculty since 1996. She's been our dean since 2008. Please welcome Tsu-Jae King Liu. Get to introduce somebody else, and that is Jose. Jose is here to introduce our speaker for this evening.
Hello, everyone. I am Jose Rendon, and I'm here to introduce Pedro David Espinoza, someone known as the Robin Hood of technology. He is a TED speaker, AI investor, and author, and a leader in entrepreneurship and social impact. When I learned about his work, I felt it aligned with a lot of my own values and experiences as a first-generation Latino student. I grew up in Los Angeles, specifically the downtown area, where 95% of my community was Hispanic and 50% was English learners. So STEM, and especially entrepreneurship, were non-existent or even available for us. For students like me, success often felt out of reach because we don't always have a role model to show us what's possible. When I found out about Pedro's work in founding Pan Pedro USA, an organization that empowers low-income women to become entrepreneurs and leaders by building libraries and computer labs, it resonates with me deeply. I, too, hope to give back to my community and provide the resources I didn't have growing up. Pedro's journey is remarkable. He began his career as a car mechanic at the age of 15, while launching music singles on platforms like Apple. On a side note, I highly recommend anyone interested to give his song titled Every Day a Listen. I listened to it, I loved it. At 19, he founded Smiley Go, a startup that gained support from prominent figures. I won't steal Pedro's thunder by listing all his achievements, But what stands out to me, once again, was Pan Pedro USA. In addition, they serve on the board of organizations dedicated to fund diverse entrepreneurs through initiatives like the Innovators Fund. He helps provide critical resources and funding for diverse founders, ensuring that marginalized voices in the entrepreneurial world have a chance to succeed. What strikes me most about Pedro's work is that it shows us success is not just about individual achievement. It's also about lifting others and creating opportunities for those who may have never imagined them. As someone educated at Berkeley, Stanford, and Harvard, Pedro had used his platform to elevate marginalized voices and communities, showing us what true leadership looks like. Without further ado, it is with great honor that I would like to welcome Pedro David Espinoza.
This is working.
This is working. All right. Thank you so much, Jose, for that kind of. My lapel mic is not working. Is it? It's on.
Okay. Let me, can you switch off with me and I'll.
Oh, that's not working. Wait. Okay, this is not. Okay. Apologies for the delay. Thanks so much, Jose, for the kind introduction, and welcome, Pedro, for back to Berkeley. I don't know how long it's been since you've been back to the campus.
It's 2 years. Thank you so much, Tsu-Jae.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to let the students in the audience know that Pedro is the first speaker this semester who actually started a venture while he was still a student at Berkeley. And also he's the first one who has had a focus on nonprofit organizations. So we're really pleased to have him here today. He kindly allows us to show a video, a recording of when he was a student here, pitching his startup company at the Berkeley Skydeck. So I thought we could start with that video, and then I can start asking him some questions. All right, take it away.
Oh, well, maybe we'll do that. Hold on. Do this in the most manual way possible.
8 years ago.
Okay, 8 years ago.
Can everyone hear me?
You can't even hear that, can you? Would you allow me to do my tech work while you all start, and then we'll go back?
Okay, well, why don't you give us some context? What was going on at this time? Provide some context.
No, great question. So this was during the I Am a UC Entrepreneur campaign. I believe today they've changed it to I'm a Changemaker. I'm a UC Changemaker. And so we had to record like a 1.5-minute video of pitching your startup. So the problem, the solution, the market size, the competitive landscape, and your exit strategy. At the time, I believe I was living in Unit 2. Does anyone here live in Unit 2? No one. Okay. In Urban, has anyone lived in Unit 2 in the room? Okay, there we go, a few people. I was living in Urban, and I had a co-founding team. And I really believed in the power of giving back, and so I recorded this when I was like 20 or 19.
My name is Pedro.
All right, when you're about 19.
And I'm a UC entrepreneur. I'm the founder and CEO of SmileyGo, an enterprise software funded by Frank Baxter, a trustee of the University of California Berkeley Foundation, and ex-CEO of the Jeffries Group. SmileyGo was also funded by the Berkeley Haas Startup Dean Seed Fund, and we empower corporations to give smarter through data science.
Here we go. Is that it?
Really?
That's called
That was your whole pitch?
2-minute elevator pitch.
Really? That was less than 2 minutes.
Well, it was a 30-second elevator pitch.
There you go.
Okay, all right. So I know the tagline for your venture there for SmileyGo was give smarter through AI. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell us how SmileyGo did that?
Yeah, no, great question,
Or
Tsu-Jae.
facilitated that?
So we essentially target the data of the 1.3 million 501c3s in the US. And for those of you
Yeah, what is it?
that don't know, a 501c3 is a nonprofit entity or company. It could be a university, it could be a charity, it could be a church, a synagogue, it could be a chamber of commerce. Or even Blue Shield of California, the health insurance organization, is a nonprofit corporation. And so similar to public companies that file every 3 months and every year a 10Q and a 10K, which is a financial statement, feel free to ask questions, nonprofits have to file a 990 form every year with their financial information, their board of directors members, and also they have to submit like their CEO and number of volunteers. And so we essentially used machine learning algorithms to help match and predict companies with nonprofits based on industry, geographical location, zip code, number of employees, revenue sizes, and many, many different categories as well.
Okay, and what was the point of connecting the nonprofits with the companies?
Great question. So the point was to help them increase their social impact, because many companies only saw past data, but they couldn't really predict future CSR data, which is like corporate social responsibility, and see, for example, how can we create impact in a new zip code or a new state that we're launching a new office. A lot of companies, for example, were moving to other states like Florida or Texas or Tennessee or Nevada, and so they wanted to get good PR, but also maximize stakeholder value. Because I think at Berkeley, we all believe, yes, shareholder value is super important, but shareholder value goes beyond, and we have to focus on our employees, our stakeholders, families. And so we really believe that companies could make a difference by partnering with the right NGOs and right nonprofits locally.
Fantastic. So how did your experience as a student here at Cal help inform, give you the idea for Smiley Go and help you succeed?
Great question. It really started at an interview for the Leadership Award, a scholarship. Has anyone here been a recipient, or has anyone applied for the Leadership Award? Okay, one person, 2 people. And so when I was going through this interview process for the Leadership Award at the Cal Alumni Association, one of my interviewers said, like, Pedro, what's your story? And I shared about volunteering at a library in Peru and being a high school student and seeing how when nonprofits get adequate funding, they can really focus on building more libraries, building more computer labs, rather than focusing a lot on fundraising. And so my interviewer said, Pedro, you're in the Bay Area, you're in Berkeley, like you're in the capital of innovation in the US and the world. Why don't you scale this with entrepreneurship? Why don't you create like a model, a business that can match nonprofits with companies to maximize social impact? So that interviewer really ignited the light in my brain and like it inspired me to start a company at the age of 19.
It's amazing. Thank you. All right. So I know when you give talks, you talk about the importance of failure and failing forward. So what happened early in your career to make you focus on that?
Thank you, Tsu-Jae. Number one, like many freshmen or sophomores here, as a good undergrad at Berkeley, I applied to the Apple Finance internship. I applied to the McKinseys, the BCGs, the Deloittes. And to be very candid with you all, it was all rejection, rejection, rejection. My parents till today live in Peru, and I go to Peru a lot. And so I had pretty much zero network, right? I came to the US when I was 18, 11 years ago. Yes, I'm 29. And so I couldn't really work for someone else when I was here as a freshman, as a sophomore. And so I was like, well, if I can't do anything for someone, might as well start my own thing today. And that's when my older sister, who at the time was a student at Stanford, unfortunately, she told me about this like entrepreneurship program called Engineering 145. And so I applied to the class, I got waitlisted, and as a good go-getter, right, the immigrant hustle, I looked up the professor's like last name and office. And so I stood outside for like an hour, because in my mind, I was like, he's gonna grab lunch eventually, because he's human. And I was right. So Professor Tom Kozlik left his office at noon, going to Treseder, for those of you who've been to Stanford. And he was like, why have you been waiting outside of my office for an hour? I was like, Professor Kozlik, I really want to take your engineering class. I have a startup idea in corporate social responsibility and giving and corporate giving. And he's like, well, you have 5 minutes to convince me. Why should I let you in my class? And so I shared the whole spiel of Peru and helping build the library and volunteering at my mom's foundation. And he shared a quote that till today I remember, which is, investors don't invest in the business idea or the pricing strategy or the go-to-market strategy of the firm, but investors invest in the resilience and the values and the failing forward mindset of the entrepreneur and the character and the soft skills. And so now that I give back and invest in startups myself, I look at in teams, right? Focusing on being comfortable with failure and failing forward and cherishing mistakes, right? A/B testing, BC testing, and like ZZ testing, basically.
Thank you. All right, so whatever happened to Smiley Go, and what are you focused on now?
Excellent question. So Daniel Yee and Daniel was my technical co-founder, and he was also a computer science major at Stanford at the time, at Berkeley, excuse me, at the time. In 2018, we joined Abide, which is Carpenter's Code. It's a software as a service company in Menlo Park. I was sharing with Vicky, prior to that, we did have a full cash offer of M&A, And then I think that was one of the biggest mistakes I've made. I like counter-offered something way bigger, Tsu-Jae, and then the other company totally bailed. And so we didn't do that specific M&A. So we just joined a different company as an acqui-hire, like an equity swap, like a stock option swap.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. And what are you doing now?
Yes. Today, I do 3 things. So I'm the CEO of Pan Peru USA, which is a social venture that we invest and help women entrepreneurs in Peru to become entrepreneurs. So we have these like entrepreneurship boot camps in the Peruvian Andes, because my mom is from the mountains. And so we help them raise money. We've received grants from Pfizer, from Bristol Myers Squibb, from Intuit, to help women train on like product market fit, product design, e-commerce. These women are creating like handmade alpaca scarves and beanies. Has anyone seen those like alpaca hats in the room? A few? Yes, okay, I see a few nodding. And then the second thing I do, I'm an active investor in different startups, Tsu-Jae. I'm in 3 startup boards. Melty Surgical is a health tech FDA-approved medical device that finds lost needles in the operating room because nurses and doctors make mistakes. Another startup that I'm in the board is called Actaware. The founder went to Berkeley as well. And it's a fintech ESG data company. They basically help consumers look at the supply chain of any product that they want to purchase. And so, yeah, I'm an active investor. And the last thing, I love writing. I love interviewing CEOs, deans, university presidents, and getting to know their story. I love writing. I love interviewing other thought leaders. And writing books has allowed me to get to know outstanding leaders like Chancellor Carol Christ, whom we met through her a few years back.
All right, so we have this nice slide showing the timeline of your actually not very long life so far. And I know right now you actually give invited talks all around the world, right? Companies invite you because you're a very inspirational speaker. But before that, the Robin Hood of tech, tell us about that? How did you earn that reputation?
That was through the TV called Voice of America, the Spanish version, La Voz de América. They had like an internal selection of like 5 like social entrepreneurs who used entrepreneurship for good. And like Jose was sharing, like entrepreneurship goes beyond yourself. And it really brings me back to my upbringing in Peru. My mom, Julia, always raised me with values of paying it forward and giving back. I remember a quote as a kid. She would say, the most powerful force, la velocidad más rápida, is not speed of light or speed of sound, but it's willpower, right? La fuerza de voluntad, like having that grit to fail forward, having that grit to start a company or write a book or give a TED Talk or do whatever. And so that really fueled my motivation for me to use business for good. And so in 2017, I was very honored that the Voice of America nicknamed me the Robin Hood of tech because I used SmileyGo and then the second startup called Scholar to give back to my community.
That's really inspirational. Thank you. Let's move on to the next short phase of your career so far. You've written 2 books. The first one was titled Differences That Make a Difference. It's up there. And in that book, you interviewed some of Silicon Valley's top innovators, including Eric Schmidt and Reed Hastings. So how did you actually, here they are. And we're going to have a raffle, right, to give out copies of these books? Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you actually get these really busy, very successful people to even talk to you, to give you an interview, and to have them featured in your book?
Wonderful, wonderful questions. Honestly, it starts with being relational over transactional and really focusing on social capital. Like I mentioned before, I came to Berkeley when I was 18. I lived in Unit 2. I took classes in Evans, class in, I'm probably butchering the name, Echeverry, thank you. And I really had this desire to create my community, my network, because a lot of my classmates at Cal here, they would tell me, like with all honesty, be like, Pedro, yeah, my mom works at Cisco, my dad's at VMware or Google, or my cousin. And I was like, no offense to like my mom or my dad, but like they don't even know what VMware stands for, right? They're not dumb people, but it's really just a very different reality in Peru, like more brick and mortar companies there. And so that really inspired me to get to know other people and build my community, which leads me to how I met my first sponsor. Her name is Rosemary. So when I received the leadership award in 2013 in the fall. At the time, the president of the Cal Alumni Association, his name is Jefferson Coombs. I believe he's no longer at Cal. And he wanted a guest speaker, like a student who received this scholarship, to say thank you to the donors. And can you believe it? Like, the fear of public speaking is real. And so very, very few people raised their hands or volunteered, similar to Jose, the conversation we had 10 minutes ago. And so I was like, I remember my dad's and mom's advice of being like, no tengas miedo, dale, which means like, don't be fearful, just raise your hand and volunteer to speak. And so I grabbed the mic for 2 minutes. I'm like, thank you so much, Cal donors, for supporting Leadership Award and other scholarships at Berkeley. And at the end of my speech, this lady approaches me and she's like, Pedro, I really like your joy and your positivity. Can I please grab lunch with you or treat you to my country club in Orinda? In my mind for like 5 seconds, I was like, number one, I didn't grow up playing golf in Peru because you have to pay like $120,000 entrance fee, and that was not my reality as a kid in Peru. But I switched this challenge as an opportunity to ask her, Rosemary, can you teach me how to golf? And yes, I can go and play with you. Can you teach me how to swing the club? And she's like, yeah, next Tuesday, 8 a.m. green time, tea time at OCC, Orinda Country Club. The next thing I do, I text all my buddies at Ehrman in Unit 2. I'm like, hey, does anyone have a spare club or a golf hat? Or I go to Walmart or Costco, like immigrant hustle, right? We have to be frugal. And so long story short, I befriended Rosemary at the golf course. She introduced me to her son, Eric, who was an executive in Adobe. And can you guess 5 years later, what was the first tech company that hosted my first book talk as a first-time author? It was Adobe. Right? So it's all these like relationships mantra of focusing on being human with other leaders. And to answer your second question, how did I get to interview these CEOs? It was truly thanks to the Berkeley network of faculty, thanks to, yes, the Harvard Business Analytics and the Stanford Engineering Network as well. But I remember at Haas, they brought the CFO of Ford, Bob Shanks as well to speak. So just being bold enough to wait in line after taking pictures with the CFO and like asking for their business cards, sending emails, just having that tenacity mindset allowed me to create a network from scratch in Berkeley.
Excellent example. All right, so when you interviewed these people, what were the top insights that were not obvious that you gained from talking with all these leaders?
The number one insight that really inspired me was my interview with Anita Sands. At the time, she was on the board of trustees at Princeton. I believe she's no longer there, but she's on the board of Pure Storage and ServiceNow. And Anita was telling me how language can really shape our way of thinking and how inclusive or intentional we want to be. And Anita shared one example. She said, pre-COVID, like 2019, 2018, a question that they really asked for interviewing potential board members at a Fortune 500 was, have you been the CEO of a Fortune 500 company? And that question already discards a lot of people of color, people from non-traditional backgrounds like veterans, women, many immigrants, people from the LGBTQ+ community. And so Anita was telling me they had to switch and upgrade that lingo, that diction to, have you managed a P&L that's equivalent to the revenues of a Fortune 500 company? And then you happen to find lots of more diverse candidates who are the CEO of AT&T Business or the CEO of Toyota Latin America. Do you get it? That has the revenues, that has the profit and loss statement, the income statement of a Fortune 500, but it's a subdivision, right? And so then you can get more non-traditional background executives and leaders to join your board of directors.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that insight. Mm-hmm. Now, you have also said that good leaders recognize that it is important to learn how to be effective allies as they drive positive change in their organizations. So can you share with us some examples?
Yeah, allyship is super, super important. And I associate allyship with sponsorship. Does everyone here know what the difference between a mentor and a sponsor is?
I would say no.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
So a mentor is someone who gives advice, and a sponsor is someone who has the skin in the game and gives the social capital, financial capital to the student, to the mentee, to the Gen Z, to the millennial, right? And I think we have a picture with Frank Baxter, but this is a funny story. I was taking multivariable calculus here at Cal, and at the time it was an 8 a.m. class. And to be very candid, I think I slept in or I was like super hungry, so I went to the GBC, the Golden Bear Cafe, and I see this like 80-year-old business person wearing a suit and a nice dress shirt. And I remember my mom's advice of "Júntate con los mejores," which is like surround yourself with wise people and like ask questions. And I was like, well, I could eat breakfast by myself, or I could sit next to this gentleman. And I was like, hi, my name is Pedro. Can I sit next to you? What's your name? He said, I'm Frank Baxter. I was like, Frank, why are you here? Like, we're all freshmen and sophomore at the Golden Bear Cafe. You seem to be very wise. And he said, I'm a trustee at the UC Berkeley Foundation. And our board meeting got a bit delayed, and I was hungry, so I didn't want to leave campus. And so we started this conversation, and immediately, dear friends at Cal, I see that Frank was wearing a US pin. Do you know those magnets, like a US flag and a flag from Uruguay? And I was like, why are you wearing a Latin American flag on your business? And he said, well, I used to be the US ambassador to Uruguay under President Bush. And that's when we start speaking in Spanish, right? Two people from different generations, mother tongues, ethnicities, political affiliation, just everything. But we bonded over Spanish. He gives me his card, and in less than 2 years, can you guess who was the first angel investor in SmileyGo, in my first tech startup when I was 20 at Berkeley? It was Frank, right? The former CEO of Jefferies, the ambassador to Uruguay, the trustee at UC Berkeley Foundation. So it's really, like I said, taking risks, learning to be comfortable while being uncomfortable, and building your personal board of mentors, because no one does it alone. We all need a community and a team to support us.
That's amazing. Okay, I don't know if we want to go back to the other slide. Let's talk about your second book, The Real ROI. That's Return on Inclusion. Some questions, let me ask you some questions about that. What are some statistics that you can share with us about the benefits of inclusion and the pitfalls of a company becoming unconsciously exclusive?
Wonderful questions. I would say one, and this is a fact I actually learned in Berkeley a few years back, is that 44% of Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants and or their children. And as we all know, right, the US and the Bay Area is so entrepreneurial in my research with all these CEOs, but also if you look up the facts, is because we represent over 100 plus nationalities in the Bay Area, right? And the US is so ethnically and culturally and mother tonguely diverse. And I think the more we have diversity of thought, the better. I remember taking a class at Haas here as an undergrad, and they always taught us for a startup, you need 3 people. You need a hacker, who's usually the person who builds the product. If it's SaaS or tech, you're coding the product. You need an artist or a designer, an architect, who's the UI, UX, right? The user experience, the user flow, you do all the wireframes. And then you need the hustler, who's usually the person who raises money, hires people, fires people, just does all the sales, basically, who's usually the CEO. And so, given your question, I think companies can really benefit in embracing diversity in all perspectives. The obvious are gender and ethnicity. I think we could easily find that in universities and companies, but I think it goes beyond the obvious, right? Diversity of generation is a good one, or diversity of thought or background. I'm seeing a lot of companies today creating employee resource groups for Gen Zs or for young parents, because the cost of being a parent today in 2024 is super, super expensive. And a lot of millennials and Gen Zs are already in the labor force and are struggling with this. So, like I said, it's going beyond the obvious of how many Hispanics or Latinos or people of color or engineers at X company, but how many of them have a mentor, have a sponsor, feel a sense of belonging, right? How many of them are we retaining or promoting? That's really, really important.
So can you, for our students here, mention some companies who stand out in this regard of really understanding the tremendous value of inclusion?
Yes, absolutely. One company that I've been working for 4 years now, and I think they're amazing when it comes to being intentional with inclusion, is Bristol Myers Squibb. They're a life sciences company in hematology, things to do with the blood. And just so you can have an idea, most companies have employee resource groups. These are affinity groups, like veterans at Google, women at Google, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Bristol Myers Squibb has created PBRGs, which is People Business Resource Groups. And they tie the mission, the KPIs, the OKRs of the company with the employee resource groups, right? So for example, for Hispanic Heritage Month, they're just not doing a taco party or a salsa party. And no offense, I love dancing and I love Mexican food, but like they're connecting and doing professional development sessions that have to do with like multicultural marketing or like bilingual sales training and really helping the Latinas and Latinos and Latinx people at that specific company with like soft skills and hard skills for them to thrive at BMS. Does that make sense? And the other thing is all their employee resource group leaders are paid full-time jobs. So if you're the head of women at Bristol Myers Squibb or you're the head of veterans at Bristol Myers Squibb, like you're getting paid for your work in managing an event, managing a budget, getting an executive sponsor. Versus in other companies that I don't want to name, all of this is volunteer. And it's hard. Being a full-time software engineer at a Meta, at an NVIDIA is a full-time job. And then if you're expected to lead the Gen Z group at NVIDIA, that's a lot of work. And so Bristol Myers Squibb really compensates and motivates their employees to care about inclusion at the core level.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that outstanding example.
Yeah.
Well, we have just a little bit more time. I want to ask you from either of your books, actually, especially Return on Inclusion, you interview so many leaders. What are some of the most impactful or memorable quotes from those leaders that you can share with us?
Yeah, I can share two stories. And one is very personal because as someone I admire and as a mentor, Pat Gelsinger, who today is the CEO of Intel, I think we really bonded over our values and being family first. But I was invited to a conference in 2018 in San Francisco in downtown by TBC. And Pat was the CEO of VMware at the time. And he was the keynote speaker. Kind of similar to this. There were like 200 people in the room. He gave a beautiful speech, talked about his book, which is The Juggling Act, which is a wonderful book if you haven't read it. And I remember I was starving. I was like so hungry. It was like 7 p.m. I really wanted a picture and like get his autograph, but there was a huge line. And so next to the auditorium in San Francisco, there was Fogo de Chão. I don't know if anyone else likes Brazilian steak, but I love Brazilian food. It's so good. We can talk after. And I was like, I'm sure there's going to be a way, like God will provide a way to meet Pat later. And so I went to grab dinner with my friend who were at the conference. I ordered his book on Amazon. The next day it arrives to my house in Pleasant Hill. I lived in the East Bay. And I read The Juggling Act in like, 5 hours. And then I emailed him. But I did not have his contact info. I literally sent 10 emails. Look, this is the entrepreneurial hustle. I sent pat@vmware.com, p@vmware.com, gelsinger@vmware.com. You get the gist, right? 9 bounced, 1 went through. And the email was short and sweet. It was like, Pat, read your book, saw your speech last night. I want to be a CEO like you when I'm 20, 30 years from now. We share the same values. You come from farm country. My mom's from farm country in Peru as well, et cetera, et cetera. He replied at like 4:52 or like 5:01 a.m. because yes, he wakes up so early. He's like, meet me at the VMware offices in Hillview. I think that's the name of the street back in the day, at like 6:30 a.m. next Wednesday. I had to wake up because I lived in Concord and Pleasant Hill. All the way to Palo Alto is a lot. And so I took the risk, right? And I met him. And little did I know that I believe his daughter adopted a Hispanic kid. So he's a grandpa of a Latino boy. And little did I know that we went to the same church denomination, and we had all these things in common, right? And like I said, focusing on the human aspect of things has enabled me to connect with people at a human level. And really, forgetting if they're the ambassador or they're the president of the university or whatever, but really focusing on bilateral mentorship. And the same thing I did for Frank Baxter. As a 19-year-old, I asked, Frank, how can I help you? Right? Bilateral mentorship. Because life is not all about take. It should be reciprocal. And Frank at the time was leading a Latin civics seminar here in Berkeley. And he said, Pedro, I don't really know a lot of Latin American students your age, and I want more people to attend my seminar. Can you help me spread the word. And I was like, absolutely. I have all my buddies from like Brazil, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Chile, Argentina, Venezuela. And like I said, you don't have to be a CEO to help another CEO. You don't have to be a billionaire to help another billionaire, right? If you really focus on empathy and being relational over transactional, you can build your personal board of directors. And I'll end with this other story with Pat, and has to do with the last interview for the Real ROI. Pat connected me to Michael Dell because at the time Dell was the parent company of VMware. This is 2021. And so this is during COVID. And does everyone remember that Zoom had a 40-minute cap if you had the free version? As a frugal entrepreneur, I had the free version of Zoom. And for all these like CEO interviews, I always asked for 10 minutes because I was very strategic with the script. But with Michael, we really hit it off. We talked about like him dropping off of UT Austin. I shared about my 2.6 GPA in undergrad and how I dropped off of an academic quarter at Stanford. And so we really talked a lot about failure. And then we also talked about Peru. Apparently Michael Dell at the time went to all the countries in South America except Peru. Long story short, we get kicked out at minute 40 because I had the free version of Zoom. And so Michael had to like go to the Zoom link and like open my Zoom room again. And the first thing he's like, aren't you like a Berkeley like entrepreneurship like successful guy? And I was like, Michael, yeah, but we have to be like resourceful, right? We can't like spend money on like so much things. And so the funny thing is, last year I went to Davos for the World Economic Forum, and I ran into Michael Dell, and he remembered that story. And he was like, oh, you're the guy from Peru and like helping women in the mountains. And the number one skill that I remember from all these CEOs is that they're very self-aware. They have extremely good memory, and they're BS detectors. So I encourage everyone here who wants to build a startup or a personal board of directors or a nonprofit or whatever, keep it real and be vulnerable with your mentors and mentees and with your people. That way you can really connect, like I said, on the human level with other CEOs.
That's pretty amazing. Okay, so you've given a lot of outstanding advice here. Looking back at yourself at that video that you shared at the beginning of our time together, what additional advice would you give to your former self?
Take even more technical classes. I took a few CS classes here. I took Mechanical Engineering 24, 191. My memory's so bad. But I would even take more statistics classes. I think statistics is super useful. Take more higher divs, math classes. I think the more technical, the better. And another piece of advice, I would say focus more on having a healthier lifestyle with like jet lag and time zone changes. It could be hard on your body, like sleep 9 hours a day, exercise every day, and family time. If I can be vulnerable with all of you, in 2015, I skipped Christmas. I was doing Smiley Go 24/7, but I just stayed here with my co-founders in Berkeley at Skydeck, and I didn't even go to Peru for Christmas. And it was hard, but you have to make decisions. And I think if I were to redo my undergraduate career, I would focus more on quality time with my parents. My mom has Parkinson's, and I'm pretty open about mental health. And I know that we're all super young here, but you only have, well, usually you only have one mom or one dad or like two parents, right? And so I think focusing on your family is super important. And that's been a way for me to connect with mentors today. For the Real ROI, I had the honor of interviewing Dr. Omar Eshraq. Omar used to be the CEO of Medtronic, the chairman of Medtronic, and I think also of Intel. And I shared about my mom's, like, she has a Medtronic generator in her chest because she had the DBS surgery for Parkinson's. And we related over that. And like he talked about his family too, and like his marathon running and like mental health practices. So like I said, if I were to redo my 4 years at Berkeley, take more technical classes, spend more time with family, and sleep better and exercise more.
All right, thank you so much. Well, you certainly are experienced and wise beyond your years. And so we're really proud that you're a Berkeley alum.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have time. Let's open it up to questions from the students here.
First of all, just thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
You might get some questions too. So do you want to, like, should we do this based on questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't put that pressure on me. Make sure they're all good questions so I don't have to make that choice.
And we can sign them after, too. The first one has 100 CEOs, the second one 50 CEOs. But I think the second one's better because Tsu-Jae is part of the second book. So.
Okay, Pedro, thank you very much for your talk. Given your commitment to inclusion, what strategies do you have, and where do you find most effective platforms to connect with people, with mentors that are also aligned with that commitment to inclusion? Where do you find those mentors usually, and how do you connect with them? How do you know that these people really have the same vision as you?
Great question. And what was your name?
Sara.
Sara, un gusto. I find mentors in places where I have the same values and principles. So I can share one story perhaps or two. For example, when I interviewed Chancellor Carol Christ, Carol at the time was the Chancellor of Berkeley, we finished the interview and she's like, Pedro, you should meet Tsu-Jae and Rich. Like both of them they love technology, they love entrepreneurship, they're in a few boards, they're committed to inclusion. And so a lot of the CEOs and university presidents and board members that I interviewed, they organically connected me to other CEOs and university presidents. And it really was natural. Like it wasn't my intention to be like, hey, can you connect me to 10 other CEOs? No, it was more like, how can I help? Right? Like, what can I do for you? That bilateral mentorship. And I think when your mentors see those pure intentions of helping, they want to help you even more. Versus if you approach a mentor and you're like, I want you to be my mentor, do this, X, Y, and Z by 3 months, 6 months, 9 month timeline, like it's too, in my opinion, it's too artificial. I think the more relational and pure you are with your intentions, the better. And then another great place that I found amazing mentors, in addition to Berkeley, obviously, if I can be very candid, I'm pretty open about my faith, just church. Like people who believe in giving back and praying and helping the community. Not going so far. The Bay Area, the Tenderloin district, as we all know, is very underserved. And at Davos, I heard Mark Benioff, the founder of Salesforce, talk about his book Trailblazer. It's a great book. And he gave kudos, Mark Benioff, to Faith Force, which is a interfaith resource group, like employee group at Salesforce, that brings people from Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, like different religions, atheism, together to help the homeless community in San Francisco. And that is true inclusion, right? Like it's forgetting our differences because all of us come from a different country or mother tongue or ethnicity, but coming together to serve our community.
Okay, sorry. Your talk was very great, it inspired me. I'm a CS and a music student. I saw on your slide that you was a music entrepreneur as well, so I would definitely come on that later. But my question would be, you seem like very positive-minded, and that really inspires me. What is like your approach on it, or how do you keep that positive-minded attitude even in days when you don't feel like that?
Excellent question, Lucy. We talk about music. I love playing the piano, especially have the piano like Newark. I think Houston has so many layovers. I love playing for like 20 minutes. Let's close some business deals. I think the days or the hours that I'm not as hyped as I am today, because I just went to Unit 2 and I was just remembering memories from 8 years ago. It's beautiful. Sports really helps me. I either swim or hit tennis balls, if anyone plays tennis, or pickleball, or go to the driving range, or go biking. I have a bike in my Redwood City house every day. And I think sports is a great way for me to leave my phone, leave a screen, and go swimming for an hour and a half, or play tennis doubles with some other VCs for 2 hours, or pickleball, or anything, has really helped me grow as a human, as a leader, as an entrepreneur. In Spanish, we have a phrase, cuerpo sano, mente sana, which is healthy body, healthy mind. I'm a big believer that sports produces endorphins, and mental health is so important. Another thing that really helps me is reading and meditating and praying. I'm pretty open about my Christian faith, but I just read scripture. I love the book of Proverbs and Psalms, and my mom and dad raised me in that ecosystem and just praying, and like I said, just leaving my iPhone. Again, I think our generation, unfortunately, we all grew up, I had an iPhone in middle school, I'm sure you all had one in second grade, because you're younger than me, and I think we're all with our phones all day, and that's not good. Like, we should focus on this rather than being this all day. And the last thing, having that personal board of advisors and mentors really helps me. I haven't talked about this, but I'll share, like, so many failures and setbacks in my personal life. When I was 23, my parents separated a few years back. Divorces are always super tough. I was super sad and crying. My mom has Parkinson's. The first time I applied for U.S. citizenship when I was 22, I got rejected. I didn't pass like 2 classes at Haas. I failed in a Stanford engineering class. Like, a lot of failure, right? But we have to learn to be comfortable with it, right? Like, it's part of life, right? Your first startup is not going to be the $1 billion exit. So, in those tough moments are the ones when I call a mentor, or I play pickleball with a mentor, or see someone and share them about my mom's health struggles or my health struggles. So it's important to have those moments.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Pedro. So my name is Selim. Thank you for coming. My question was more practical about all this relationship you're having and creating with all these people you're meeting. How do you maintain this relationship over time?
A great question. My mom taught me to send handwritten, like, Happy Thanksgiving or Happy New Year's or like Merry Christmas or Happy Birthday cards. And so I usually have a list or a community, and Tsu-Jae's nodding because I usually send it to mentors like every year, maybe during Thanksgiving, like I said, or Christmas. And it might be a small detail, but in my mind, Sadeep, right? That's Steve, I'm so sorry. Oh, Saim. Salim. Saim. In my mind, those small details go a long way. Like a thank you card, a happy birthday card. If you don't want to write a card, maybe a LinkedIn message or an email message, but I think handwritten notes go super far. And just to give you one example, I was taking an engineering class at Stanford, which I skipped most of it because I was doing Smiley Go. But at the end of the quarter, they send you a course feedback. I'm sure we do the same thing at Berkeley too. And Professor Jack Fuchs, who teaches management science and engineering at Stanford, he was like, why didn't you come to class? And I was like, well, my parents were sick and getting divorced. I was doing a startup. And so we met up. And I immediately saw that Jack was wearing tennis shoes. And I was like, Jack, do you play tennis? He's like, of course I do. And so we just started playing tennis. And now he's a VC, and like we co-invest in startups together. And when I went to his office hours for the first time, I gave him like a Peru shirt. And like he wears it. So like stuff like that, right? Like every year, just finding an excuse to nourish your network, to nourish your community is super important. Even if it's just twice a year, playing pickleball with a mentor, or going for a walk, or like seeing, you know, it's important to maintain those relationships and find something mutually beneficial, right? Like working out and doing business together is perfect. Thank you. You're welcome.
Hello? Oh, sorry. Oh, right here. Here. My name? No, my name's Omar. Oh, pleasure to meet you. So I'm also, weird, sorry about that. I'm a first-gen Latino student, and I guess one question I had for you was, when you first came to Cal, did you have like a specific plan, as in like networking and meeting with people, or how did you like approach that when you first got here?
Excellent question. I went to the Career Center a few times. I still have pictures of those. And I remember I met like Apple and like all these big companies. And like I said, I did give out my resume and applied, but I got rejected every single time. I knew nobody at Apple at the time, or at Cisco, or at VMware. I was 18. I joined 2 clubs at Berkeley. One was UCBMUN, Model UN. I don't know if it's still existing, but we went to Montreal and LA and other cities to do the debate, like public speaking. And the other club I joined was Oratory at Berkeley. And it really helped craft my passion for public speaking. I think I love like storytelling and sharing ideas. And I will always remember the first paid client I had. It was a community college in Contra Costa in Richmond. They had a lot of Hispanics and Latinos in the room, and they wanted me to just inspire them on the next generation of education. And so, yeah, those clubs helped me. And my plan was, both my parents, yes, they're engineers and entrepreneurs as well, like me. I really wanted to start something, but like I said, finding a church community, finding my own family, like my own mentors, my own friends, no one does it alone. You know, I live with my aunties here, Eloisa. She lived with my sister Karina for 4 years during residency in medical school. She's a doctor. Like, having a support system is so important, right? Like, no one does it alone. No one does it alone. No.
Is it on? Okay, cool. Hi, my name is Sabrina, and I really, here.
Oh, hey.
Way back here. I really appreciated how candid you were about your experiences and your failures. I wanted to ask, how do you really navigate a business world that might prioritize capital over your personal values? And have there been experiences where you have to make a decision where the better business decision is opposing your personal values?
Let me see if I understand your question. Like, if I've ever been in a scenario where I had to choose the business rather than my values? Is that
or just like, how do you make that decision when it's so contrary or difficult?
Great question. Well, I usually invest in founders that I can share the values, and like the values of resilience, of tenacity, of flexibility, like adaptability. And this is quite hilarious because I'm working on my 3rd book. It's going to be on resilience. And I was just last week in New York because we had Climate Week, we had the World Economic Forum annual Sustainable Impact meeting, and then the United Nations General Assembly. But at WEF, they talked about resilience. I was like, oh, I guess it's a very relevant topic today. And I think for me, when I look at a startup founder, I look at 3 things. 1, team risk, because people, problems, we all have issues and flaws. That's really important. 2 is technology risk. And 3 is market risk, right? But when it comes to people, I really focus on how long have the founders known each other? Because starting a company is like a marriage. I've never been married, but it's like having a kid. It's like having a baby, right? Like, you're pre-revenues, you're starting it from scratch and getting the first users, your customer acquisition cost, creating the MVP, launching the MVP, beta testing, like ABC testing, like everything. And so I really, really spend quality time with the founders first before even thinking, should I put my money there? And then 2, I'm a firm believer that financial capital by itself is not helpful. The people I invest in, I introduce them to other VCs or other angel investors or other customers. If they're trying to sell it to Salesforce, I have friends at Salesforce, or Google, or Cisco, or et cetera, right? Like, social capital goes beyond financial capital, in my opinion. And those are the sponsors, right? The sponsors are the ones wearing your t-shirt where you're not there, in the boardroom, in the hiring room, and the promoting room. That's why sponsorship is so important.
Thank you.
I think we have 2 questions there. Or...
Hello. Okay, so yeah. So my name is Innocent. I have a social enterprise called Chariot Africa, where we provide digital services to rural communities. These are like mobile digital labs, solar panels on top, satellite internet access. And one of the challenges that I've had, the idea over the past 2 years, is that because the people that we are providing the service to, which are the people in rural communities, typically don't afford the service we're providing. So our whole business model was we have to show the value we're providing to corporates and NGOs and international organizations. But for the most part, within competitions like startup competitions, one of the first questions that everyone has is, how do I make money from this? And from our perspective, we're like, if we develop this technology well enough, we can actually activate the potential that is existing within these rural communities. And for me, I believed that story a lot, but after interacting with a lot of investors, I've also realized that perhaps like sometimes the incentive is misaligned. So my question to you is, might it be that the strategy that I'm using is off? Or maybe am I just talking to the wrong people? I know you have already mentioned how you succeeded in that domain. Which types of people should I be speaking to, and how should I be approaching them so that at least we can be able to connect the value chain to make impact?
Every person is different. Like, I've met with some investors who only want to chat over text. Literally, like they ask you what your customer acquisition cost is, like what your timeline is, what your exit plan is. I've met with other VCs who just prefer FaceTime. Other VCs who just want to meet like literally in the golf course, like other investors who want to meet over tennis or just phone calls, no Zoom because they're zoomed out. Every person is different. I think embracing that skill of being flexible and adaptable to the other person has helped me get yeses. But granted, I had like first, like not even kidding, like 24 no's to get my first maybe, to get my second maybe and third maybe, and then a yes, right? Like, not everything happens in a week or a day. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of us, like young people, we want everything for yesterday, but it takes time to build trust. Which reminds me of a cool interview I had with Bill McDermott. He was the CEO of ServiceNow. It's a great company, by the way. And he told me, Pedro, it takes to build trust, it's like droplets of water in a bucket. Like, tuk, tuk, tuk. And then to break trust, you just have to push it or elbow it, and it's done, right? So like building trust takes years. Like I said, Frank Baxter, it wasn't like next week. It took like a year and a half, 2 years to like build that relationship, right? So I think patience is another great skill that we all have to embrace, is learning to go through the journey and the process. And being comfortable with making mistakes. I'll share one other story, how I got the job at the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, founded by David Packard from HP. I got invited to speak at Stanford in 2020 during COVID, and I was running late as a good Peruvian, super bad. And so I got like 10 minutes late to the speech, and the dean, the associate dean at Stanford Medical School, her name is Dr. Rena Thomas, was so kind. She waited outside for my Uber and like helped me take the books. If I hadn't been late, she would have been upstairs like just ready to do the thing, right? But as she was helping me, she shared that she's half Salvadorian, half Indian, and she shared about her kids and her husband. And so we talked about family. And then after my speech, she's like, I really want you to meet my husband, who's the new CEO of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. And little did I know that they also went to Menlo Church, Menlo Presbyterian in Menlo Park. And so all these things, right? But like making a mistake, being intentional enough or humble enough to say, hey, I am sorry, like I messed up, like this is my mistake. I take responsibility for my mistake. Can you forgive me? And when a mentor or a sponsor sees that you're coachable, they approach you even better. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hi, my name is Karina, and I'm a CS student here at Berkeley, obviously. But I had a question focusing more on like the nonprofit space and how you get investors to kind of believe in the people from your home country. I'm first gen, and I like immigrated here when I was pretty young, but I'm very connected to like my community back home, and I've always wanted to do like nonprofit work with them and like helping that community. So how do you convince people who don't necessarily understand your perspective to kind of believe in a community that they don't know personally?
I think it's all about stories. I think the best founders and entrepreneurs are the ones who experience the problem themselves. And if you can really draw and share and create this story to your donors, to your investors, to your supporters, the better. People don't really remember stats. Like, yes, we can share all the stats about, inclusion or AI or LLMs or ChatGPT, but like people will remember stories. At least for me, with my Peru story, I would always share how, helping build this library when I was 13 in Pampas, which is like 12,000 feet above sea level. I was like so cold. And meeting these young boys and girls like Diego, Roxana, Juana, Maria, like a bunch of kids, and me asking them, what do you aspire to be when you grow up? Because, when you're a teenager, you start thinking, I'm 14, now what do I want to be when I'm 20, when I'm 30, when I'm 40? And they all said farming. because they had nothing else. And there's nothing wrong with agriculture. I love Central Valley, California, a lot of ag, right? But like giving them the opportunity to dream, right? And then I saw firsthand how Pamperu got funding from like Siemens and Toyota and Shell and other like global Fortune 500 companies. And then we were able to build a computer lab, and those little boys and girls 4 years later, when I was 18, were like, Pedro, I know what I want to study now. I want to be an engineer. I want to go to law school. I want to build bridges. I want to do civil engineering, right? Like sharing that story for me with potential donors and supporters helped them understand my reality of what am I trying to build, right? And then use the lingo and their terms, right? If they're software engineers, talk software engineering lingo. If they're corporate finance, Wall Street people, talk Wall Street people lingo. Like if they're humanities people, talk humanities people lingo, right? Like you have to be a student of your audience, basically.
Thank you.
One.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Breathe, like in and out, and I'm a PhD student here in computational biology, PhD candidate. I appreciate deeply every word you shared. My mom has MS and everything. I have so many questions, and I'd love to play tennis with you sometimes. And I was wondering if you want to share your daily routine, or if you have a schedule, as well as how do you manage the email flood, like all the notifications, and if you have any life hacks for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a lot of fly hacks. One, I always share this one. Provide feedback. United, Delta, they all have like feedback forms. And if like you get delayed for like 5 hours or miss a board meeting or something, usually they can give you money in return if you give like really good feedback. So I do this all the time, and I get ETCs, which is electronic travel credits. I can talk about flights all day. I sleep better on planes too. And then the other thing, your question was about, what was your first question? Sorry. Oh, my daily routine. Yes. So I usually wake up, I read scripture for about 20 minutes. I usually like meditate or just walk with no phones. Wake up early, like 6 a.m. every day. My mom raised me that way, no alarms. I also go to bed usually early, like at 10 p.m., 10:30. I'm already usually asleep. And my mom was very strict and disciplined, like no desserts. I'm also lactose intolerant, which is a perfect excuse to say I don't like ice cream or anything dairy. And my day is really active. I usually play tennis or a pickleball or a racket sport or something with another board director or another investor or another entrepreneur or like a Berkeley or Stanford or Santa Clara University founder. I usually have a board meeting every other week because I'm in like 7 boards. I travel every month to Peru. I'm very intentional of seeing my mom with her Parkinson's and my dad with his lung condition as well. And what else is in my day? I am very involved with the fellowship called Chi Alpha at Stanford, and I help the grad students with some mentorship because so many people have helped me when I was 18, 19, 20, 21 here in Berkeley that the least I can do is give back and share my mistakes and failures. I always share a big text mistake that I had. You probably remember it. Ron Gonzalez used to be the mayor of San Jose. This is like 10, 15 years ago. He was the first Hispanic mayor of San Jose. And I had his number, because in any conference you get business cards, right? And like you save people's emails and numbers. But we were not BFFs. And so one day I texted the wrong RG. So my Bible study leader is Roger Gawi. He's Middle Eastern. He's RG. And Ron Gonzalez, the mayor, is RG. And so I texted the mayor. I was like, hey, man, when are we playing soccer? Like after church, I'm going to bring chicken wings from Costco. And he literally replied with a question mark. I was like, oh, he's going to unfriend me on LinkedIn. He's going to think I'm weird. But I took that failure as an opportunity to start a text conversation with him. And I was like, what sports do you play? and he was like, well, I go hiking at the Dish at Stanford. And I was like, well, if I talked about church, do you pray? Do you believe in something? He's like, yeah, I go to mass in downtown San Jose, obviously, because he's the mayor of San Jose. And so, long story short, I get a Starbucks coffee date with him. And after 4 months, I ask him, Ron, can you join the board of directors of Smiley Go? A year and a half later, can you guess who introduced me to the president of San Jose Water Company, to the VP at Google, at Dropbox? The mayor, because Ron knew everybody in the South Bay, right? And so we had these users because of the relationships, right? And how did I meet my first co-author, Jorge, who's Peruvian? I asked Ron, I was like, Ron, you've been mayor. Are there other Peruvians in the Bay? And he's like, I know one other Peruvian, Jorge. He could be your father. And yes, he's like 40 years older than me. And we bonded because Jorge's mom is a doctor, my mom's an engineer. We were both raised by powerful women, and our moms taught us to cook. And Aloysia's laughing, but I do cook once a month, not every day, like twice a month, every other week. And so we bonded with Jorge over cooking. And he was the CEO of Silicon Graphics. We're probably too young here, but SGI used to be one of the biggest companies in Silicon Valley. They created the graphics of Jurassic Park, the Terminator. Googleplex, before being Googleplex, was the HQ of Silicon Graphics. So Jorge was the CEO there, and we decided to write books together.
Hi, Pedro. Right here. I'm Zach. Very inspirational talk you gave today. Thank you so much for that. You have so many accomplishments under your belt, and you've been hustling since you were 19 or so. How have you kept your drive and your hunger to keep going? Because I know when you're young, you want to achieve all this stuff, but now that you have everything under your belt, what more is there to achieve for you?
Thank you so much. You're very kind. My drive has always been to go beyond myself. I think that's one of the values of Haas, right? Like students always beyond yourself, question the status quo. Hopefully I remember this. And I believe, like I said, like so many people helped me that I want to continue paying it forward. A lot of the startups I invest today are, most, if not all, are immigrants, women, veterans, people of color, people with physical disabilities. I've invested in Wheel the World. The founders are from Chile. And like I said, my mom has Parkinson's, and so she has a mobility issue. And Wheel the World is like the Airbnb for people with physical and cognitive disabilities. So what inspires me? Like I said, I'm pretty open about my faith. Honestly, I think life goes beyond this, and life is short. And we should honestly cherish our families and friends. And I think for the future, I love creating stuff. Like I said, I've been fortunate to do a startup at Berkeley. I've written a book, or well, 2 books, and I've never done a venture capital fund. And one of my best friends from Peru, who lives in Miami, we're both teaming up, and we're gonna launch a VC fund early next year. So like I said, I've always had dreams of like, hey, what haven't I done? You learn by doing. My mom would always say, se aprende haciendo, right? Like, we will fail, but we learn from our mistakes. And just being comfortable and saying, hey, I tried that idea for 6 months. It wasn't a success, but at least I tried. And I think we're blessed enough to be in the Bay Area where people actually cherish failure. Like my second startup, it's not there. It was called Scholar. I did it for like 6 months with Richard. He was a PhD student in computer science, undergrad at Princeton, PhD here at Berkeley. We created a marketplace that connected high school students in China with Berkeley and Stanford and Ivy League University, like freshman and sophomore, to provide essay writing feedback. Because a lot of students in Asia, especially in China, really care about going to a great university for undergrad. And so we did this because Richard is from Shanghai. And so, yeah, like, was it a success? Quote unquote, no, but at least we tried for 6 months, right? And so like being open about what you tried with mentors and professors and being vulnerable and also respectful of their time, I think they really value that.
I cannot thank you enough. I actually have 3 thoughts that I wanted to share after hearing you all. Well, actually 5 thoughts, but let me start with the first one. You have done 2 incredible books, and you've talked about different quotes, but I have to say these quotes from your mother could be the best ones. So maybe you should do like quotes from my mother. De mi madre. How's that for my little Spanish? Yeah, there you go. And our theme this semester, and you're our 4th speaker, is the art of the pivot. And there are three things that I heard that were quite interesting, which I wrote on my hand because I don't have anything to write with, and I can't remember that well. The first one was the woman who you met through Cal who asked you to play golf at her country club. So this will happen to you all, that someone will ask you to do stuff and you don't know how to do it. But Pedro, what you did was something really important. You used that to your advantage and asked for help. And asking for help or asking for advice is the way that you get to money. That's my biggest secret for you all. And you didn't do that because that's what you're looking for, but that's what ended up happening. And you used that and you're like, I don't know how to play golf. And I just think it's like ironic that you don't have a golf ball on the cover of your book. It's a baseball. The second thing is in terms of pivoting, there are different ways to get something done. Now, I don't really recommend that you never go to class, like your example at Stanford. However, you can get things done by meeting people, by addressing it differently, by going and listening to the speaker from Dell and not getting him to sign the book. But you can order the book, and I'm, hint, 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 later on, and you can read it, and you can email the speaker. I always have students asking me what email people have. Founders want to be found. It's really not rocket science. It's exactly what you said. Only one time did I actually reach out to the wrong person, but he ended up being interesting also. You just kind of do the first initial, last name, or first name. And then the earlier they are with the company, the more likely it's going to be is the first name and the company name. And the other thing that you have done to enable these lifelong ability to pivot to different things is you have this database, to use a technical term, of connections. You don't know when you're going to use them, but you've created these really authentic connections with people. And I actually think it makes life fun. By the way, not just, it's useful, but you have this database. So if something doesn't go right, if you, ask somebody to speak from your book and they can't make it, maybe they'll recommend somebody else, or maybe you'll bounce off to somebody else. And so I think those three things are quite important. And I said there were 5 things. So the last thing is this. I absolutely am thrilled, Dean Liu, that you have joined us. And you are this force in technology, in semiconductor technology. But what I heard, and I couldn't figure out what the connection was, to be perfectly candid, with Pedro. And yes, you're a Cal grad, and I know you believe in diversity, but having this diversity of somebody who's basically an icon in technology, play with you because you all play tennis together. I just think...
And pickleball, too.
And pickleball. You never know. So just because someone is known for something, get behind that. And you never know where that will lead. You'll be up in the front here. Yeah?
All right, so I haven't said much because I didn't have the microphone earlier. But anybody who wants to play tennis or pickleball with Pedro, all right, he's ambidextrous, okay? So... can't hit to his backhand ever because he just switches hands. All right, so just keep that in mind if you ever want to challenge him.
I did bring my rackets, but go ahead.
Yeah, so he beat me soundly in tennis. Pickleball was a little more closer, but everything he said today was really true. I mean, he's an authentic guy, and I think you can all learn much from his experience and his wisdom. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I know that people stay up front for a few minutes if you have questions, and in the meantime, I'll go ahead and post, surprisingly, Smiley Go. Thank you all for your attention, and next week we have...
Thank you for coming next week.
I appreciate you so much. Yeah, and congratulations on DC. Thank you. So next year.
Who knows who's coming next week? I cannot remember at the moment.
9 more months. Yeah, that's it.
Another incredible speaker, so thank you all.